I just want to talk to you today about IRS Form 1120S line by line instructions, U.S. income tax return for an S corporation. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of the Awesome Sweetie Kiwi Show. How are you today? I hope you are doing fantastic. I'm doing marvelous, if you were to ask me. If you are doing as terrific as I am, go grab a cup of coffee or tea or vodka and let's roll. In today's conversation, I'm going to quickly talk to you about Form 1120S, and I'm going to give you line by line instructions on how to fill it out and how to file it. Form 1120S is how S corporations report how much they make to the IRS. So if your business happens to be an S Corp or taxed as one, you'll have to file Form 1120S as your company's federal income tax return. Specifically, this form tells the IRS how much your business earned, things like your income, deductions, and credits. So this is actually a 5-page form. And when a business is taxed as a sole proprietorship, its profit and loss is reported on Schedule C, right? In an S corporation, Form 1120S replaces Schedule C as the way the business profits or loss is reported to the IRS. So unlike Schedule C though, Form 1120S is not filed with your personal tax return. It is submitted to the IRS as a separate filing, and it is typically due on March 15th each year. As is the case with Schedule C, the profit and loss on Form 1120S will flow through to your personal tax return and impact your personal tax liability. This is because, like sole proprietorships and partnerships, S Corps are pass-through tax entities, meaning what? The tax liability belongs to the shareholders of the corporation rather than to the business itself. And since Form 1120S is the S Corp income tax return, you'll need to fill it out if your business is an S corporation or an LLC that is taxed as an S Corp. So those are the two primary conditions. And if you filed or are filing Form 2553, which actually declares that your business is an S corporation or is an LLC that should be taxed as one, you'll also need to file Form 1120S. So the thing here is that if you are you an S Corp shareholder, then you should report your earnings on your personal tax return, not Form 1120S. So you have to understand here. So Form 1120S is basically an FYI form. So the S corporation is telling the authorities how much the business made during the year, but you take the data on the data from 1120S and you transfer that data onto your personal tax return on your 1040. Now, what do you need to fill out Form 1120S? First of all, Form 1120S can be downloaded straight from the IRS website, okay? It's also available through most tax filing software programs. So you need to have the following information on hand while filling out Form 1120S. So the date you became an S corporation, the date your business was incorporated, your business activity code, your employer identification number, your EIN, the number of shareholders you have, details about assets, profits, losses, and deductions, income statements, balance sheet, information about any fixed assets, shareholder transaction listings, income tax payments, and more. Now, you also need to think about the accounting method and whether it's cash or accrual. Remember, there are two primary accounting methods that the IRS recognizes, so cash or accrual, and information about stock your business owns. And a lot of this information can be complicated. I mean, we certainly understand that. So don't be afraid to reach out to an expert, to a CPA or an EA to ensure the form is filled out correctly. And so when is really the form due? If your business runs on a calendar year, Form 1120S is due on March 15th. If you file a business tax extension, your due date is September 16th. So S Corp tax form have more complicated deadlines than personal tax returns because there is no hard and fast date, right? Technically, Form 1120S is due by the 15th day of the third month after the end of your tax year. So here is what that means. So if your tax year, let's say if your tax year is on a calendar year and ends on December 31st, guess what? Then Form 1120S is due on March 15th. And if March 15th is a Saturday, Sunday, or holiday, you need to file on the next business day, right? And the December 31st calendar year sort of scheme is the case for most small businesses. And if you shut down your company, you will have to file Form 1120S one last time. That due date falls again on the 15th date of the third month after your company is dissolved. And to file Form 1120S, you can file electronically through the IRS e-file system or with most tax prep software. You can also file the form by mail. So you have three options. And so now let's dig a little deeper into the whole 1120S, and I'm going to give you now line by line instructions. First thing you have to understand is that the first part of the form, which takes up the entire first page, is where you will provide the profit and loss information for your business. Remember, I was telling you earlier, there is an analogy between Schedule C for a sole proprietorship and Form 1120S. So here you have to put all the profit and loss information, and items A through I on this page ask for identifying information about your business, including the date the business was incorporated and the date of S election status E and A respectively. So can you see that here? So you have so A, you have to put the S election effective date, right? I'm showing you right now on the screen. B, the business activity code number, right? The next number. And you have to put the name. First of all, don't forget the tax year beginning January 1st, 2020, for example, and ending December 31st, if that's the case with you. You need to put the entire address, the EIN, the date incorporated, the total assets. Total assets, you have to take that data from your balance sheet. And so we have now C. Item C, it says here you need to check if Schedule M3 is attached. I'll talk to you about Schedule M3 later on, but for now we just need to move on. And one thing I want to say here is that G, you have to actually answer the question: is the corporation electing to be an S corporation beginning with this tax year? And in item H, you need to check if this is the final return, if there's a name change, an address change, an amended return, an S election termination or revocation. And I, you need to enter the number of shareholders who were shareholders during any part of the year. Now, remember that if you have S election termination or revocation, you may need to attach an explanatory note to the return. And J, you need to check if this is corporation aggregated activities for Section 465 at risk purposes, or grouped activities for Section 469 passive activity purposes. If you want to us to sort of elaborate on those two sections, please comment below. We'll be very happy to do that. So, and then you move on now from item 1 through 6. So item 1 is pretty straightforward: the gross receipt of sales, returns and allowances, the balance. So that's you have to subtract line 1B from line 1A. Then you go to 2. This is the cost of goods sold, line 2. Line 3, you put the gross profit. Gross profit equals what? Equals the balance on 1C minus the cost of goods sold. And 4, you have to put the net gain or loss. And 5, other income, if that's applicable to you. And number 6, that's where you put actually the total income by adding lines 3 through 5. And if we move on here, line 7, you have to put the compensation of officers. This is an important, and we actually covered this in another show, especially Form 1125E. And line 8, you have salaries and wages. Remember to actually deduct from the salaries and wages the employment credits. This has to be the net balance here. Number 9, we have repairs and maintenance. 10, bad debts. This is allowance for doubtful accounts. So 11, you have rents. 12, you have taxes and licenses. 13, you have interest. This is the interest that you paid on loans that the S Corp has taken during the year or through previous years. 14, you have depreciation not claimed on Form 1125A or elsewhere on return, and you might have to file a Form 4562. We actually have another show on 4562, so check that out to understand amortization and depreciation better here. And 15, depletion, and do not deduct oil and gas depletion. In 16, you have advertising. Then you have pension profit sharing on 17. 18, you have employee benefit program. Other deductions are on line 19. Remember to attach statements if you are deducting that. And then you have 20, you have total deductions. This is where you have to add lines 7 through 19. And the 21, you have ordinary business income or loss. This is basically, you get this by subtracting line 20 from line 6, right? And then we move on to 22A. This is the excess net passive income or LIFO recapture tax. LIFO stands for last in, first out. This is an inventory accounting method. And so you have here 23A. You have the current year estimated tax payments and the previous year overpayment credited to the current year, right? So you have to put here all the tax information, the tax deposited, the credit for federal tax paid, and the reserved for future use. And you add lines 23A through 23D. You put that on 23A. And on line 24, you have to put the estimated tax penalty, if applicable, amount owed overpayment. And don't forget to sign. You need to sign the document. You need to put the date and title. It has to be, the signature has to come from an officer of the S Corp. Now, if you have a paid preparer, then make sure the paid preparer puts his or her information, including the PTIN. The PTIN stands for the Professional Tax Identification Number. This is how the IRS tracks the good boys from the bad guys, if you will, when it comes to CPAs and EAs who are working on behalf of clients with the IRS. I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another section of the Awesome Studio Kiwi Show. I want to talk to you now about when it comes to Form 1120S. There is a constellation of schedules that basically accompany, if you will, that Form 1120S, and we have about 6 or 7. No, we have 5 rather that I want to talk to you about. The first one is Schedule B. Now, Form 1120S contains its own schedules right inside the form itself. So the first one is Schedule B. This is where you provide other information about your business. So Schedule B looks intimidating, but chances are you won't have to complete everything on it. So line 1 is where you actually provide your accounting method. I was telling you earlier, you have the cash or accrued, right? And in this case, cash or accrual rather. And if you use other, make sure that you specify what that other means. And most small businesses use cash basis as their method, accounting method. On line 2, you're asked for your business activity and whether you provide products or services. And after you completed that line, most of the remainder of the information on the form is provided by checking either yes or no column for each question, right? And only questions with yes answers will require you to provide additional information, again, if that is applicable to you. Don't forget though, folks, you need to complete lines 14A and 14B. So you can see here 14A and 14B where it says, did the corporation make any payments in 2020 that would require it to file the Form 1099? If yes, did the corporation file it, or will it file the required Forms 1099? All right. And one thing I also want to say here is that if you made payments totaling $600 or more for services to one or more non-incorporated entities during the year, your answer to these 2 questions is yes. In this case, you have to send Form 1099 NEC, NEC. And page 2 or 3 or Schedule B asks for a lot of information, but you might be able to skip some of the questions, which again are depending on your specific business. You will need to know your accounting method, your business's activity code, and a brief description of your products or service. And one thing I also want to say here is that basically the make sure that whatever information you have here, you back it up, because Schedule B has been known to be an audit trigger for a lot of S corporations, and the IRS is very adamant at making sure that S corporations are complying with the law. So whatever you put on Schedule B, be able to back it up. So now let's move on to Schedule K. That's the next schedule. On Schedule K, you will summarize your shareholders' income, deductions, and credits. So if you answered yes to questions 11A and 11B on Schedule B, you don't have to complete Schedule L. If you answered no to either of these questions, you must complete the balance sheet, which is part of Schedule L. Now, I will talk about Schedule L later on, but I quickly want to go back to Schedule L, of course, is linked to Schedule K. And it's important to understand why. Now, Schedule K is here, as you can see here. Schedule K, all you have to do, you have the first part, you have the shareholders pro rata share items. By the way, folks, nowadays, a lot of small businesses, a lot of S corporations use accounting software to populate all this data. And you can either use accounting software or tax preparation software, or you can actually outsource the whole service outright to a CPA or EA. But it's always important to understand the behind the scenes, right? The behind the scenes workings of every form, which is why I'm explaining this to you. But the first part, the income or loss section, this can be actually taken straight away from the accounting software. If you use QuickBooks, for example, the information can be populated automatically. So you have income and loss, lines 1 through 10, and then you have the deductions part. So section 179 deduction is very important. If you file that, you need to attach form 4562. 4562 is the form that talks about amortization and depreciation, and this is where you have to actually pay attention to MACRS or ACRS when it comes to the depreciation method. And MACRS stands for the Modified Accounting Recovery Cost System, and ACRS stands for Accounting Cost Recovery System. And ACRS stands for assets that were put in place before 1986. Now you move on to the credits. Credits, again, whatever applies to your business, put it here from line 13A all the way to 13G. And then the last part, you have to put all the information about the foreign transactions if those are applicable to you. You also need to put information here about, we continue here, we're showing you again here the Schedule K. It goes on from 15A. This is the 15 section, line 15, A through F. This is about the AMT. And 16A through 16E, this is the items affecting shareholder basis, other information, and reconciliation, if that's applicable to you. Now let me talk about Schedule L. As I said earlier, Schedule L is kind of linked to Schedule K. Why? Because Schedule L talks about balance sheets, talks about the financial statements, and we all know that the financial statements, if you go back to Schedule K, you would notice that it says shareholders pro rata share items, right? So whatever is taken at the company level, it is then it's then prorated onto all the shareholders. So Schedule L here we have, and this is basically, if you answered no to questions 11A and 11B on the Schedule B, you'll need to complete Schedule L, which is a balance sheet. And this information should be easily, again, accessible from your accounting software. And what are questions 11A and 11B? Let's go back to Schedule B to kind of look at that. So Schedule B, the question 11A is, does the corporation satisfy both the following conditions? The corporation, so A, the corporation's total receipts for the tax year were less than $250,000, and the corporation's total asset at the end of the tax year were less than $250,000. If yes, the corporation is not required to complete Schedules L and M1. But if you said no, in other words, you're making more, the company is making more money, then yes. So Schedule L. So Schedule L, basically what it is, it gives an idea. It gives the IRS an idea of what's going on in terms of liquidity. Because a balance sheet, what is a balance sheet? A balance sheet gives information about a company's financial condition or financial situation. So as you can see here on the screen, you have the beginning of tax year and end of tax year. So the IRS is doing a comparative analysis of movements of assets, liability, and stockholders' equity. And those are the three items. This trifecta, you actually see it in the balance sheet. So you can see here it says balance sheets per books, and you have the assets, liabilities, and shareholders' equity. So the IRS is just trying to analyze a company, and an experienced accountant can actually deduct a lot of information, can actually retrieve a lot of information by analyzing a company's balance sheet. This is a trove of data, actually, when done correctly. So that's why the IRS wants this info from S corporations. Now we want to talk about schedules M1 and M2. Now, if you completed Schedule L, then you'll need to complete Schedule M1 too. Why? Let me show you right now on the screen. If you are required to complete Schedule L, you must also complete Schedule M1. Schedule M1 basically reconciles your books to your tax return. Most businesses have income and expenses from business-related activity that is not included in the taxable profit calculations. So let me give you an example. Meals and travel expenses are typically only partially deductible for tax purposes, and the business might use a different depreciation method for assets than the method approved for tax purposes. And your financial statements are used for management purposes and to help you make business decisions 365 days a year, right? Now, they are used for filing a tax return 1 day a year. So Schedule M1 reconciles what's on your books, what's reported on financial statements, to your tax returns. In other words, we have something called a U.S. GAAP. So this is a generally accepted accounting principles. That's financial statements. That's the principles based on which the financial statements are prepared. But the IRS has its own principles, accounting principles, right? So Schedule M1 here allows you to reconcile that. So line 8 of Schedule M1 should match line 18 of Schedule K when you have finished reconciling your books to your tax returns. What is line 18 Schedule K? Let's go back to that. We can see here on the screen. So Schedule K, line 18, it's income or loss reconciliation. Combine the amounts on lines 1 through 10 in the far right column. From the results, subtract the sum of the amounts on lines 11 through 12D and 14P. So this is what it is. And one thing I also want to say here is that the section, the M1 section, reconciles your company's income or loss per your accounting books, the numbers used to make business decisions on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes, one thing you have to understand is that you can get all that data. Not sometimes. I think most of the time you can get the data from accounting software. Okay, so that's for M1. And advanced accounting software like QuickBooks or others, or TaxSlayer or TaxAct Pro can actually pull the data and do the reconciliation for you automatically. Now, what about Schedule M2? Schedule M2 may be short, but it can be complicated. Basically, it's designed to tell you your business balance or how much money is left over after income and losses. And that figure is calculated by subtracting the difference between your company's income and losses from your balance at the beginning of the year. So again, here we have some kind of comparative analysis, right? This is what it is. And Schedule M2 is actually the final section of Form 1120S. Line 8 of this schedule tells you how much money is left in the corporation that has not been distributed or allocated for a specific use. Although it is one of the shorter schedules of Form 1120S, it is also one of the most confusing. So if you need more info, please, we're giving you guidance here, but reach out to a CPA, an EA, or any other tax professional who can help you. Or if you have the talent or the expertise in-house, use that expertise or use accounting software. All right, folks, this was it for today's conversation. I was talking to you about IRS Form 1120S, line-by-line instructions, U.S. income tax return for S Corporation. So as I explained to you what the Form S, the Form 1120S is, whether you have to fill it out, what you need to fill it out, when is the form due, how do you fill out and file Form 1120S, and what are the Form 1120S line by line instructions, as well as the schedules. There are 5 schedules, as I said. So you have Schedule B, Schedule K, Schedule L, Schedule M1, and last but not the least, Schedule M2. Thank you so much for your attention. Happy filing, and I will see you next time. But until then, remember, stay marvelous.